Hello, my name is John Liu, Flow Ninja. Today I have a tutorial on how to really use Excel in Microsoft Flow. You're looking at the flow that will connect to an Excel file and pull out the rows from that Excel file inside Microsoft Flow. Before we go into all the actions, I just want to explain why we're not using the Excel connector. Okay, so in Flow, there are two Excel connectors. If I type Excel here, both the Excel Online and the Excel for Business. So these are actually the same connector. One connects to, that one is for your personal OneDrive, and that one is for your OneDrive for Business, which also includes SharePoint. So both of them. Now, if I filter, the main reason we're not using the Excel Online connector, neither one, is because there is no action for get records. Okay, there's no get record. You can get a row, you can get tables, and then get rows present in the table, but you can't get rows, like all the rows. So if you want to say, oh, give me all the rows in worksheet 1, you can't do it. And you might say, oh, what is a table? A table is when you go into Excel, select a range, and then go to table format and turn that into a table. And then you might give that table a name. So a table is how an Excel could quickly say, okay, this set of cells is a table, and we're going to put some indexes on it to make it quick. But basically, the connector does not let you just get rows. It needs to have tables. And then there are various other problems with it. It does a file locking, which is very annoying. It is actually also quite slow. So yeah, lots and lots of problems with connector. In general, I mean, these are feedback that we've all given to the Flow team, and we hope they will fix this soon and make this a first-class connector that we need. But until then, the best advice I can give is don't use the Excel connector. Either one, don't use them. We will talk to an Excel file directly using Microsoft Graph and bypass the whole Excel connector. Okay, so this is quite in-depth tutorial. Sorry it's come down to this, but this will save you a lot of time. Just follow this through and you can get it done. All right, first, I'm going to show you where it is. So we are going to use, so I put my Excel file. Let me show you. This is my Meteorite file. Meteorite file is a file with 45,000 rows, so it's a massive file. It sits in my default documents library in my default SharePoint site. So my default site root, the default document library, and sits inside here, the Meteorite. Okay, so the way in SharePoint we access it is we use the send HTTP request to SharePoint action. We're going to specify select the site, use get, and we're actually going to use a special API endpoint in SharePoint that deals specifically with the what we call the feed 2.0 APIs, which are actually as the subset that is mapped to Microsoft Graph. So within SharePoint, you can call any of the OneDrive Microsoft APIs through this path by calling the feed 2.0. And we're going to call 2.0/drive, and you can see in Microsoft Graph, you can read the information about how this will work. But in general, when you call drive, you get the default drive of that SharePoint site, which happens to be this document library. Okay, we'll come back and talk about if you have a different document library in the SharePoint site, how do you deal with that? We'll come back to that later. But let's say now we're going to get default drive. You need to pass through. You want the JSON application JSON. And then this is going to return us a JSON object. And from this JSON object, we want just the ID property from. So let me just run that first. And yeah, you see So without showing you the rest, what we have here is the JSON that was returned from the SharePoint. and the ID is this crazy little bit of ID. So this is what we have in let me bring on Notepad. In SharePoint we call this, well, in Microsoft Graph, sorry, we call this the drive ID. Okay, now you don't have to memorize this, but I just want to explain what that is. That's called the drive ID. Okay, in fact, that's the drive ID to the document library. So it's basically the drive ID to this URL path. Okay, and there's actually a way to, like, it's actually a base 64 encoded version of this URL with special characters stripped out. So it's a bit difficult to just calculate that in Flow. But anyway, we need that ID. And we pull that out with an expression. So the expression here, we have that ID. Next, so that's the ID, and we can collapse that. And then next, we're going to actually find the file. And the way to get the file is we use an action called the, let me show you how to create this guy. If you go to add an action and use, say, Azure HTTP with Azure AD, that one, and you want invoke a HTTP request. Okay, now first time you use it, if you never used it before, it's actually gonna ask you to create a new one. So you get something like this. And when here, you need to type https graph.microsoft.com. Copy that and do it again. Okay, that's very simple. And then when you sign in, it will say, oh, would you log in as yourself by default? Click that. And then you may have to grant this permission. But once that's saved, you will get a connector that's created. If I cancel, you basically get a connector that's created like this. Okay, so you will use your login name. But basically, this action is now able to talk to Microsoft Graph using your credential. Okay, and then in here, you basically, so let me delete this. So that's how you create one of those. And you know, of course, we can use HTTP requests and get the application like a client ID and client secret and do it that way. But I just find it easier to use invoke and HTTP requests using this connector. Now this is a premium connector, but HTTP is a premium connector too, and custom connection is a premium connector, so they're all the same. So choose which one you want to use to call Microsoft Graph. So here we're basically gonna use so this is the graph syntax now. We're gonna say v1.0. You can also use beta, Microsoft Graph beta, sites, root, drives, and then we're actually gonna plug in the drive ID here. And then in Microsoft Graph, because these URL paths are so annoying, it gives you this : / shortcut where you could say, well, that's the URL bit from the root of this drive. So if you do that, we're going to make a second request. And again, we're going to take the ID from this output. And let's have a look at what that does. So the second request runs, and you'll see this returns back, basically, let's have a look. It's got a little blob there. But basically, you see here, it's picked up the file Meteorite XLSX, my Excel spreadsheet. It's modified by me. It's got some file size. So this ID is what we call the drive item ID. So we have drive ID, and then we have drive item ID, and that looks like that. Okay, so you basically, to navigate the OneDrive API or the SharePoint document library API in Microsoft Graph, you basically need these two references. The drive is a map to, it could be like physical drives, but it also could be basically your personal, the root of your personal OneDrive, that's a drive, or different document libraries on every SharePoint site. Those are also drives. Right, so each one of them have the root that has an ID, and then the drive item ID is basically the folder plus the file name to the item. So this may include, subfolders. You may have inside the folder John and then slash file.xlsx, right? So there might be folders in there. And to resolve those folders, you use this syntax here. Where is it? See here where I do this item path, you could do John / meteorite, right? So, and that short URL there, the relative URL to the document library, that gets resolved, and you will get this drive item ID. Okay, 2 IDs. Next, we're gonna call this again, and this time, let me pull this out, make it big. Okay. In Microsoft Graph, everything is linked together. So this first part says, hey, drives, and then we use this variable, the drive ID /items, and then we use the items ID. So that endpoint will give us the Excel file. Now, because Microsoft Graph proxies and connects from a file into the Excel application, the web service itself, if we then say, okay, /workbook and worksheets, and then we'll get basically all the worksheets available in that Excel file. So it's kind of magical. One moment you're looking at the file path and the folders and path, and next minute you're stepping into the Excel file and you're being able to read all the worksheets. So in my worksheet, I only have one worksheet. It's called Meteorite Landings. So you could type it like that, / the worksheet name, and then /useRange. So useRange is a special function, and I actually specify only values. And that basically tells Graph to say, when you get the worksheet, and if you keep scrolling, you see all these blank rows and blank columns. You don't actually care about those. You want Excel to basically give you back only that first top section that has data. So if your sheet only has 5 rows and 5 columns, it will only give you that subset. So it's kind of a clever way to ask Excel to just tell me the range that has actual data and ignore all the blank part afterwards. Okay, so use range, and then this is actually very verbose. It will tell you everything about this range, including if there's formulas in those cells, if there are formatting in those cells, what's the column format, like this is a currency, this is a date, the date format's like this. So it's super verbose. So what we want to do is we want to cut down the data that actually returns from this. We're going to say we only care about the values. Okay, so this JSON could be really big, but we only care about the values. Okay, so we're going to ask for all that. Select only values again. So that's the drive item. Sorry, that's the drive ID. That's the drive item ID. And combine those, and then we say we only want the values. So we're basically using Graph to reach right inside our Excel file to pull out all the values, from this Excel worksheet. Okay, this worksheet is called Meteorite Landings. All right, and then we're gonna wrap that up. So firstly, because we select values, there is a property in this return called values. In fact, value is an array. So what we're going to do is we're going to say take the body of this, question mark values, and then we're going to put that inside a variable called array, and it's going to be called rows. And we're going to do a few more sanity check. This one is the length of our array, so the length of our variables array. And then this one is the last, so we're going to take the last row of our array. Okay, if I run that again, you see what's it doing? It's finding the SharePoint drive ID, it's finding the drive item ID. It's actually taking some time to get this item, and if I show you, you say, because the file is so big, it just gives me a link. I can show you what that looked like. We won't wait for it to load, but you will see from about here, values, you can see where all the values are coming in, all the numbers and the rows. So it's like a big array of arrays, and it goes on and on forever. Big JSON. Okay, so that's that. And then we move that variable into this, we move the value property of this JSON output into the variable, and then we did a count, and the count says 45,717 rows. If we get the last row, it says Zulu Queen. Okay, you see this? Now if we go over here and actually open up this Excel, what does it say? It says 45717. So this is media, right? It's just a large data set I pull off the, I think it's a NASA database. It just records different media landings. So it's 45717 near here. You see these are blank rows. Where are they? 45717. See here? 45717 Zulu Queen -115. Zulu Queen -115. You see this? So the array has pulled down 45,000 rows in the span of 5 seconds. Okay, that's the kind of speed we expect from Microsoft Graph. That's kind of the speed we expect from Flow. You do need Premium to code this. So if you have Premium, then you should be able to handle a fairly large loop. To handle 45,000 rows. Right. What else? One more bit. So some people say, okay, John, what do you do with a funny drive ID, right? So say for example, let me show you an example. I have copied my meteorite file to a different folder. So rather than the default root documents library, I have another library called Hey, and I've copied the same file here. I copied a few seconds ago. Now, to find that second document ID, what we can do is we can make this drives. So just make it drives. The rest of this is gonna break, but we don't care anyway. We just want to see the drives. Okay, because I don't believe there's an ID at the drives array, so the rest of it will fail, but that's fine. It's not what we're interested in. We're interested in this bit. And if I bring this up, in fact, let me big crazy array. So several different libraries in my SharePoint site, but let's look for Hey. So here we go. We found the Hey document library. This is the URL, and this is Hey. It's a document library, and there is the actual ID. You see that here. So couple of ways you could do this. You could basically come back here and edit this and say drive/.id. Now it's kind of repetitive. You basically found the ID again, and you're gonna ask for it, and then you're gonna get this. But I'm doing this because I don't have to change the rest of my flow. Okay, so we're gonna just rerun that. Because if you already know the ID, you could just plug it right into this compose and do the rest, right? So this is gonna execute the request, and now you see it's looking for meteorite inside the Hey URL. Let me see if I can see a link somewhere. No, not really. Yeah, so it's gonna look inside that URL, and then again it's gonna find that file. Okay, so it's looking for the meteorite landings inside a second Excel file that's now sitting in a different document library. Okay, so use the Microsoft Graph, the item path, you can only resolve one at a time. So if you need to resolve first the drive, and then you need to then resolve the folder with the file name, you may need to do that several times. But generally, that's how you deal with all this craziness. And let me take that ID, bring that back up. I'll basically put that next to it. So this is the hey drive ID. Okay, so you can see that's slightly different. So that's the default one, and that's the hey drive ID. And I hope that's a fairly thorough tutorial of not just Flow, but Microsoft Graph, and also how you really fetch a lot of Excel rows, and how do you deal with all that data within Flow. And you do it quickly too. These are very quick runs, like 6 seconds to fetch. I have 45,000 rows. I'm hoping you don't have that many rows. But yeah, that's all. So leave a feedback, subscribe to my channel, and hope to bring you more tutorials in the future. So bye.